Chappaqua, New York. A scenic little town, prettiest in the fall, I think. Best known for its greenery and extensive trails tucked away in the woods of our backyards. At one point, home for Vanessa Williams and I. Two young Black girls growing up in this quaint town, about a 45-minute drive from the New York City. Again, I prefer to take that scenic route to get there. Vanessa and I, decades apart, seem to face similar experiences as a person of color growing up in a predominantly white community. A sense of loneliness begins to rise as a reflection of yourself becomes harder and harder to find in skin tone, hair texture, or the dichotomy of living in this seemingly homogeneous town. Chappaqua recently fell subject to a bit of a public scandal involving some high school students and the N-word. This event was merely one public example of the town's intolerance and ignorance towards its Black students, experienced by me, Vanessa, and countless others, again, decades apart. This podcast is created in partnership with Breakthrough. My name is Lauren Stockmon Brown, and thank you for tuning in. So first off, how we start, if you could just say your name, your gender, and your preferred pronouns.
I'm Vanessa Williams. I am female, and my preferred pronoun is Ms., her, she, diva.
Awesome. Perfect. So Vanessa, I want to also center some of this discussion on the things you talked about in the Board of Education meeting. I feel like you got, 5 minutes to kind of explore these super complex topics that, you could talk about for hours. So I first want you to share your growing up experience in Chappaqua and how you ended up in Chappaqua.
Well, my parents moved to Chappaqua, Millwood, which is in the town of Newcastle. Millwood, Chappaqua, and part of Mount Kisco are part of the Chappaqua school system. My parents were driving to look at another house, and they saw a for sale sign on our house off Route 100. I was 1 year old, and they got a mortgage on the house and moved in. They chose it because it was equidistant to my mom's. She's a music school teacher. So it was equidistant to Ossining and to Elmsford, where my dad was a music teacher. So that's basically it. Wasn't particularly planned out, but just more, convenience in their new jobs. So only Black family in Millwood. Only Black girl when I went to first grade at Roaring Brook, because West Georgia was not built yet. Mm-hmm. In second grade was when I saw another Black girl lined up across the hall from me, waiting to get into her class, and her name was Toni Callwood, but I didn't know who she was. I was in second grade, she was in third. Our eyes met, and I had no idea who it was. And then we were at the AMP in Millwood, and we walked into the MP, and Toni and her mom were walking out. And that's when I identified her, and we were best friends ever since then. So I had an ally from second grade on, even though we were in different grades. What I chose to talk about when we had this emergency Board of Education meeting where the world was on fire and it was a good idea for them to talk about racism within Chappaqua. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that a lot of people have no idea that some of their comments are insensitive, that someone might find it insulting when people touch your hair without permission and invade your personal space. And I grew up, in the 60s through the 70s, graduated in 81. There were no white guys that would date Black girls in our school. Most of our dates were through Hansel, Gretel, Jack and Jill, and other Black families that lived in Westchester. Mm-hmm. And that was our social life besides playing in the band, which I did in theater. That was my life at school. But socially, it was off campus.
So I have to ask.
Yeah.
I have to ask. You came back to Chappaqua and you raised your family in Chappaqua. Can I ask why? After experience that lack of diversity, and this visibility of racism has always been there, but now we're talking about the tipping point of it, right? So what was going through your head when you made that decision to raise your family there?
Coincidentally enough, I made the decision to move after Rodney King was beat down and LA was on fire. And I would walk into a grocery store and there would be bare shelves and it felt like wartime. Mm-hmm. And I would go to the gas station and there would be somebody with a monkey wrench ready to fight because everybody was so fearful. That is exactly what we feel now. And that in 92 is exactly what I was running from. I said, let me get to a place where I can raise my two girls. At the time, they were 3 and 5. I want to get back to my parents. They're both teaching. I can control the situation there. I can still record, do movies, do theater, and have New York as my base and not be in LA where I knew the racism was systemic. And, and when I was there for 7 years, I knew that, the police were also a big part of the Klan. When they let all 4 officers go after the Rodney King beating on film, they let them all go. They were tried in Simi Valley, which is a very sheltered place. So that's exactly why I moved back here to shelter from the mayhem. Malibu was on fire. I mean, I remember coming in from, I did some publicity for my new album at the time. And we were flying in from Germany and they wouldn't let the plane land because they were shooting at the planes. So we had to land in Vegas, wait till the smoke died down from all the fires. And then we finally got a chance to land in LAX. So that's basically why I came.
So you were leaving racism, right? And police brutality and that extreme violence to then enter into a predominantly white community, which you're familiar with. So to a more familiar kind of racism, which made it seem bearable, right? So it's like you truly, like, there was no clear answer, I feel like, when you're put in that situation. Where am I going to raise my 2 girls who are people of color? Where will they feel most safe?
Right.
So raising your children in a community like Chappaqua, I'm sure most people don't know that you were, escaping a different form of racism, right? So when you're in that more socioeconomic form of racism, what are some of the differences that you noticed? And what are some of the differences that you noticed raising your young Black girls in the 2000s in comparison to your experience growing up in Chappaqua in the 70s and 80s? Yes, late 70s, 80s.
Yeah, I think the most important thing, which I think your parents did and my parents did, was connect with all the other Black families within the town. So there was a sense of solidarity. So you'd see each other in school, but also know that somebody had your back and the families knew each other too. That helps. It's, again, creating community. So I had that growing up and I made sure that, Roberta, all of our tight little friends here in Chappaqua, we made sure that our kids knew each other and socialized with each other and had a separate life outside of school. The big thing that I brought up in the Board of Ed emergency meeting was that high school to me was like college. It was open. It was free. You were your best advocate, but I saw examples of excellence everywhere. I mentioned Dr. Noisy, who was a French teacher from Haiti, impeccably dressed, elegant, brown skin, salt and pepper, beautiful hair. And that was an example of excellence. You could see him, catch his eye. I didn't even take French from him, but I knew that he was a man of color, and I felt solidarity there. Then there was Dr. Lee, who was light skinned. He was a scientist. He was one of the science teacher. Again, a doctor. And an example of excellence on campus. Doctora Galas, who is from Spain, who again wore, jackets and scarves and spoke with a Castilian accent, but was otherworldly. So she appreciated diversity and could allow. And I took Spanish from her, but you felt that you were. A child of the community of the world. And that was the big difference on campus as a student. So you felt like this world of nations that were present. And if there was an incident that happened, you had an ally to go to because they understood.
Yes.
And that's what I think the big difference is. Again, I don't know what the faculty is like there, but it's certainly not what it used to be back in the 70s and 80s.
Yes, I definitely did not have that. So I'm class of 2016, Mike Greeley, and I did not have that. And I'm wondering now, what do you think is the importance of representation beyond the more obvious answers, right? Like you yourself are an example of representation in the media, right? If we want to talk about you gaining your Miss America award, right? What is the importance of that representation in the classroom and outside the classroom for a young Black girl, particularly growing up in a predominantly white community?
Unfortunately, if it's predominantly white, it's up to the parents to show them other. And luckily, I had great parents. My mom took me to see Nikki Giovanni and Austin read poetry. That was not part of the curriculum, but it was always taking me to the theater to see Your Arms Too Short to Box with God. It was going to see, Dance Theater of Harlem, Alvin Ailey. It's really up to the parents because if the faculty is there, they need to either bring in people to discuss things that are of varied backgrounds, so they see that slice of a different life. If they can't infiltrate the faculty and make it diverse, or it's up to the parents to come up with those different adventures.
Yes. So something that I've been experiencing too is in my generation, I'm 22, right? So there's a lot of frustration from some of the Black people that I'm friends with, which is like, I've always, or just that I've felt, I'll speak in I terms, right? I've felt a level of frustration where, again, like I've always been Black. I've always had these issues. I've always faced this system of oppression that our school is now truly trying to be proactive about. Have you felt that frustration as someone who's went through the school district, raised your kids through the school district? And if so, how do you make sense of it or curve it into something that's more productive for society, let's say?
Well, I always say life is like high school. You can't wait to get out of it because it's clicky and you go through all your ups and downs. And then you get into the workforce, it's the same stuff. You got your jocks over there. You've got, everyone's split up into groups. You've got your overachievers. You got the ones that are slackers. And you're like, wait a minute, didn't I just leave the same dynamic? So I tell that to my kids, I know it's frustrating. You're going to see these same people when you get older, no matter what you do, whether it's in a corporate boardroom or whether it's on a cast, there's always one, that's and it's going to be an issue. And that's kind of life. So, it's, it makes you stronger, and more resilient. And I get that comment all the time. Wow, everything, you look at life and it seems easy. I said, yeah, you can decide what's going to stress you out and you can decide what's not. And you know your own worth. And that's the bottom line. The older you get, you realize that I can choose to engage or not. And that's a great lesson because the choice is yours. You can get hyped up or you don't have to, and that's just a life lesson.
So I want to kind of pivot our conversation into the topic of Black hair. Again, this unique systemic oppression on Black hair and what that means to you, and raising two girls, and they're now adults. Three girls. Okay, awesome. Yeah. Awesome, right? Mm-hmm. Do you have any stories to share of your own or theirs, if you feel comfortable, where they felt like they, stuck out because of the curliness of their hair, or they had this unique desire to straighten their hair, or if they just felt uncomfortable by it. Do you have any stories like that?
Oh, of tons of stories. I grew up in a time where you had your hair natural and you wore it in braids, and of course you go to school and people want to touch your braids. And then probably I think fourth grade is when I got my first perm. And before that, my mother used to sit me I was at the fire by the stove, and you get your hair pressed, and you got your hot comb on the burner, and you got your grease, and you get your hair section once a week, and you get it pressed out and put in braids, and that was going to last you for the week. So the older, more active I got, one of the Black neighbors who moved into Millwood, the other Black family moved in down the street, and she would relax my hair downstairs in her playroom. And at the time, I think it was Ultra Sheen, which was really like heavy duty stuff. And then we moved on to Revlon, which still is like stick straight, and your ears would be burning and your scalp would be on fire. But the old folks would say it takes the fight out of your hair. So people have been straightening, conking, waving, marcelling their hair for ages. And it was obviously a huge industry. So when my kids, and then also within the Black community, does she have good hair or not? Is there a fight or not? And you can tell the good hair laid down. When you'd wet it, it would just curl perfectly. So I did not have good hair. My hair was nappy, and I had to relax my hair in order to take the fight out of it. And again, these are all old school terms. So when I had my kids, and I continued to relax my hair up until probably the last 10 years or so. When I had my girls, again, the ritual of braiding it and conditioning it and keeping it healthy was something that you know as a Black mother. And then when you let them take care of their own hair, that's when it starts breaking off, and they don't understand what's going on because their systems are not in place. Melanie was in kindergarten, and I was making Thanksgiving dinner, and she's 5 years old, and she comes in, she's got scissors in one hand, and she's like, "Look, Mom," she had cut bangs, but like cut it like there. So I was like, "No," and so we ended up doing like an asymmetrical salt and pepper do. So like one side was long, one side was short. That lasted for a little bit, and then she got into braids, and we did box braids. I had to bring her down to Brooklyn because I didn't know anybody around here that could do it, and to Comet Kinks, and she was getting her hair braided then, and not too many. I mean, kids would look at her hair and want to touch it, but she's very not standoffish, but you don't want to mess with her if she says no, which is so she was fine with it. Nobody saw she was a swimmer, and so she was constantly in chlorinated water with their swimming cap on, and she wished she had better hair because it would be easier to handle. And that was what she had to struggle with. That luckily there was another Black girl on the same body type, same age, that was on the team with her. So even though she felt like didn't have the silky straight hair that everybody could just whip up under their cap, she knew that she had an ally who lived in Mount Kisco who swam with her. So it's been great that they've been able to find someone that they can rely on as an ally. But there's still, in school, there's still judgment. They've tried weaves, they've tried braids, they've done relaxers. I just finished doing a movie called Bad Hair, and it's a horror flick that Jason Simeon, who wrote Dear White People. This is a horror film that's
Oh,
coming out on
awesome.
Hulu in October. Yeah. Before MTV, people used to have their own video shows, and I play this was a black video station, but we're taking it to the MTV stage. So
Hmm.
I wanted to make sure that all my assistants had long, straight hair, and I send them to this particular black hair salon to get a weave to assimilate, and that's when the drama starts happening. So it's very deep because everyone's got hair issues.
Yes.
And I did a movie called Stomping at the Savoy. And when I get in the sun, I get light streaks in front of my hair. And when I was perming it, it was just the streaks would just come up naturally, no problem. So I remember this one actress in Savoy Theater was a big dance hall in Harlem in the 1930s, and all the swing bands would come and everybody would dance and do the jitterbug. So I remember showing up on set in North Carolina, and this particular actress said, and Debbie Allen was our director, and this particular actress said, I thought Debbie said we couldn't have any color in our hair. I said, I don't have any color in my hair. She said, the eyes I can believe, the color. So it's like, okay, girl, are we really going to go there? But again, that's within my own race,
Yes.
trying to get called out for something that's my natural color.
Yes.
As I've gotten older, this is, I've got a clip in right here, boom, boom, because I've been doing,
Very nice.
yeah. But again, it's the drag, and then when I'm at home, and that's just part of being on camera doing radio shows and morning shows and all kinds of stuff. So it's part of my drag, as I say.
Oh, wait, that's amazing. Because I saw you on RuPaul's Drag Race. So, a part of your drag. Can you explain what that means to people who might not know that term?
So as a performer, I'm a showgirl. I sing, I dance, I wear beautiful clothing when I'm performing, and when I'm doing anything, I've got to look the part. So my drag is, okay, it's time for another interview. Let me get out my kit, and I put on the makeup and the lashes and make sure my eyebrows are defined. And then I plug in my hair, and I got rows of hair that I shake out and comb and plug them in to give me a fuller look that'll look good on television. And that's part of the drag. It's just what you do, getting into the celebrity as opposed to, I have no shoes on right now. I'm wearing my daughter's dress because I ran out of clothes because I've worn everything on camera.
Yes.
And as soon as I finish with you, I'm going to unhook my hair, take off my makeup, and put on some shorts.
So when you talk about that, right, the drag, the putting yourself up, making yourself up to present yourself in a certain way. For you, it's a career and it makes sense. But does it ever like mentally drain on you, or do you ever feel the need to assimilate in a way that doesn't feel like you?
At this point in my career, I can kind of do what I want, which is lucky in terms of, saying yes to projects that I want to do and people that I want to work with. It's tough when you're young, when you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're trying to, the reason why I got into recording is I was an actress and a lot of doors were closed. People thought, oh, she's just a beauty queen. It negated any kind of a talent or intellect I had. So they'd want to see me in the room to see, okay, let's at least say we read her or we auditioned her, but it was really hard to be taken seriously. So recording allowed me to sing what I wanted to do, look the way I wanted to, and have control over my image and what I sounded like. And that backdoored me getting back onto Broadway and doing the other things that I wanted to do initially, that the door was closed because I wasn't taken seriously.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So we're starting to wind down, and I really sorry, I'm looking at my list of questions as well, and I want to get into how your parents were music educators and how the role of theater and music and the arts continues to, I feel like, propel you but also ground you in a lot of ways. And I love how your daughter's in the music industry as well. And I think it would be really brilliant to talk a little about that. How music and the arts in general make you feel, just ground you. How music and the arts in general ground you and your experiences and your family.
Again, I think it all comes back to how you're raised. You were raised in a house full of intelligent, bright, smart, loving, ambitious people. And you see by example. I was surrounded by music. Both my parents not only taught at school, but they gave lessons after school. So I would come home from school and my dad would be upstairs giving a clarinet or a trumpet lesson, and my mom would be downstairs giving a piano lesson. And I would be in my room hearing two contrasting lessons going on. And then they would sing in the Westchester Baroque Choir on Sunday. So we'd have to come and listen to Baroque music. So we learned about Bach, and I just found out that Beethoven was black, which is fantastic. If you
Wow.
have, you got it. Google, was Beethoven black? It's
Wow.
fascinating. And yeah, so he's my fave. um, but so music was always part of my life. So I felt, and also a requirement. My parents made us take lessons, piano lessons. I took French horn until I graduated high school. Was when it was cool to drop my instrument. My parents like, no, that's not an option in our household. We do it until we graduate.
Mhm.
So as a result, I can walk into a studio and say, can I see the lead sheet? Because I want to read what the music says, as opposed to, here is a lyric sheet. Sing me what the melody is. No, I print out me the lead sheet so I can read what it is, and I want to go and work it out myself. So it's great to be not just the girl singer behind the mic, but respected as a musician.
You've raised boys and girls, right? Sons and daughters. Have you seen any difference between their relationship to their hair, specifically as you raised them, when they were younger?
Interesting enough, my son has had a lot of hairdos, and he wrote a beautiful piece on Instagram about kids in Bell School wanting to touch his hair without his permission. And he got so annoyed. He said, listen, if you want to touch my hair, I'll give you a pass. And when I give you that pass, you'll be able to touch my hair. And then I get that pass back and don't touch my hair anymore. And he took the power back. So that's just, and I remember he called and said, Mom, do you have a picture of me with an afro? And I have so many pictures I was, sifting through, and I found one, but he ended up doing his own illustration, which was even better.
That's awesome.
So Devin has beautiful, sandy, curly hair when he was a baby. We kept it tight because his father insisted. As it grew out, he grew into an afro, and then he had cornrows. But he's been very experimental with his hair, and I think all my kids have been pretty experimental with their hair in terms of they've all had braids. I've had, cornrows. We've all done the summer cornrow, the summer box braids. And I think we've all checked off all the boxes for all the hairstyles.
That's awesome. So it's very family oriented. Another way of just finding a community within something that you all can relate to. So I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. You guys are so lucky. Your age right now, there are so many examples that you can literally of hair color, texture, style, face, skin, body, dolls, toys. I mean, I'm 57. When I grew up, there was one doll who was black that I got from my friend Tony Callwood, who was made in Sweden. Her name was Sasha doll, and that was back in the 60s. And that was the one doll that we had to import with brown skin. So you guys are so lucky to have this plethora of images that you can always feel some kind of alliance with, which is fantastic for just community and support.
Yes. So my last question officially, what do you think is the importance of having conversations like this, ones that My Colorful Nana Project tries to emphasize and highlight?
Knowledge is power. It's as simple as that. The more you know, the more you can educate yourself and be a better person, and feel better about yourself. Ignorance is really the thing that stifles people and makes them, I can't say ignorance makes them ignorant, but
it does.
you know, when you it fuels fear, and fear creates all this ridiculous reaction of the fear of the unknown. So always ask questions. That's the one thing that the Jewish community is always, they in all their teaching and education, they embed in their education, always ask questions. You have the right to know. You have the right to seek the answers. And we, as a Black community, should always remember that we always have the right to ask. We always have the right to know, and drill down on what the truth is. And I think, again, you can see it on Instagram. There are stories and that are happening. That I didn't even, that there's education that's happening on a global level about our past, about the future. That is amazing. And that is all of a community saying, watch this, look at this. Did you know about this? This is that history. Oh, check out this history. It's profound.
Amazing. Perfect finish. I'm really appreciative. I know you must be so busy and stacked, so I really, truly appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us and really just diving in.
Thank you so much.